Greetings my saplings, in today's video we will be discussing the Jordan 1 Satin Snake Skin Women's. To be specific, like always in these How to Cop Guide videos, we will be mentioning some release info, how to cop them, and of course like always at the end of the video, some resale predictions. The Jordan 1 Satin Snake Skin drops this Thursday, August 6th for $170 in women's sizes. They also drop for $80 in preschool sizes and $60 in toddler sizes. Now keep in mind, if you do intend on going for a personal pair, if you are a male, you must go 1.5 sizes up. Stock is very similar to what we saw on the tie-dye Jordan 1s, so this means no, it won't be very easy to cop, but it certainly will be possible even without a bot. We'll discuss resale towards the end of the video, but for now, let's discuss how to cop these. Let's talk about how you could get your hands on your own pair of these, whether it's for resale intentions or for personal wear. Kicking it off, you can actually begin trying to cop these right now, and you can do that by opening up your Foot Locker app. So essentially, you're going to be wanting to sign up through the Flex reservations. When it comes to a sneaker this hyped, evidently, you're going to want to use all your points possible. With the new Flex system, it's sort of like pay to win, I guess you could say, just in an indirect way. So essentially, the more purchases you make, the more points you get, and you could use those points for head starts towards all these releases. And I'll just tell you right now, especially if you're in a densely populated location, you're pretty much going to have to aim to get as many head starts as it lets you get, which means it's going to be a lot of points. But trust me when I say it is going to be worth it, especially if you do have multiple accounts with multiple family members or multiple friends. It will be worth it when it comes to these, and we will discuss that towards the resale predictions portion of the video. Now, in addition to the Flex reservations, you could also get started on some other raffles. You can find a full raffle list on my Twitter. My Twitter is KeithAdam10. I made a full raffle list for all online raffles that you can sign up for right now. When it comes to multiple entries, I highly suggest jigging your info, obviously, and when it comes to the email address, obviously you're going to want to make a catch-all. If you don't know how to make a catch-all, that's completely fine. You can feel free to check out this video right here. Skip to around the 3-minute mark or so. I made a full in-depth tutorial on how to do that and how to exploit all these online raffles. You can also feel free to follow my Twitter for more urgent info such as shock drop notifications and such. But now let's move on to the good stuff. Let's talk about the first come first serve site. So kicking it off at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, Undefeated should be dropping. Unfortunately, since it is Shopify, it's not going to be super easy to cop Undefeated, and since it's normally the only Shopify site dropping at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, it's going to be even that much more difficult. But since there's nothing else really going on, I would suggest at least giving this a try if you are awake at this time. Just because there's nothing else to go for, might as well give it a shot. But I'll just warn you right now, if you don't have access to a monitor at the very least, it's going to be extremely difficult to cop. But you could give it a shot. Just have the page up to search AJ1 High. When it comes to any other site though, you're going to want to search Jordan 1 High. Undefeated is just slightly different. Also, keep in mind when it comes to Undefeated, be prepared to solve the CAPTCHA checkpoint, and in addition to that, you're also going to want to make sure you sign into your account beforehand. It is mandatory that you're signed into your account when checking out on Undefeated. Now moving on to 9 a.m. Eastern Time, we may potentially and most likely be seeing Social Status, A Ma Maniére, and APB Store dropping. The reason I'm not saying 10 is because prior patterns, even when they haven't announced 9 a.m., they have dropped at 9 a.m. Eastern Time or 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so you should be able, and if they don't end up dropping, unfortunately, it will be 10 a.m. Eastern Time, which you probably won't even want to focus on these sites at all because there's better opportunities at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and you need to prioritize your time. But since these are likely going to be the only ones at 9 a.m. Eastern Time or hypothetically 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, you could give one of them a shot. Any one of your choice. They're all terrible. By terrible, I obviously mean that there's really insufficient stock when it comes to these few sites. Some of them, especially A Ma Maniére and APB Store, do load out of stock even. Social Status is normally your best bet when it comes to it, but oftentimes A Ma Maniére does also have stock. But regardless, don't expect to cop here. You should go in with low expectations, just like you would for an off-white drop, just because it's extremely difficult to cop off of these Shopify sites. There's going to be some other Shopify sites we'll mention a little later that you should actually have somewhat of a decent chance on though, and I'll talk about why then. Moving to 10 a.m. Eastern Time, before we jump into the first come first serve sites, there's a little bit of preparation that responsible individuals should be doing. So to do this, you would want to set up all queue related drops beforehand. So after the 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time drops take place, you're going to want to start preparing your tabs for these queue related drops. That would include Finish Line and JD Sports. Those two are incredible. Even though they do get botted very, very heavily, it's still great to give them a shot because there is a mass amount of stock allocated to those two sites. Not to mention, they also have recently upped their proxy protection, so there's slightly less people botting spotting it than before, or at least slightly less successful tasks picking up the product than before. But regardless, it's still going to be botted extremely hard, trust me. Just keep in mind, there is a ton of stock when it comes to Finish Line and JD Sports, so it's worth a try. Another thing I wanted to add is, recently, as of the past 6 or 7 drops or so, they've been leaving a permanent queue up for a significant amount of time, so as long as they don't tweet that it's sold out, even if it's hours into the drop, just stay in queue. If you do hypothetically get IP banned, just try connecting to your hotspot on your mobile device. Now, in addition to Finish Line and JD Sports, another 2 queue sites that you should have prepared as well is YCMC and Snipes USA. Unfortunately, the stock here isn't as high as Finish Line and JD Sports, but the stock is definitely pretty decent, and most importantly, above all, no commercial bots run these sites successfully, at least as of now. So I would highly suggest at least having these tabs open, and make sure you're periodically checking them after the first come first serve drops. We'll talk about those right now. So after you've already prepared these, obviously the next thing up is going to be, what exactly do I need to focus on at exactly 10 a.m. Eastern Time? So my personal suggestion would be to choose one single Shopify site to focus on if you're a manual user. Now, I'm going to give you my top 4 recommendations for manual Shopify sites to focus on at this time that should be dropping. So Jimmy Jazz and DTLR, because they have a checkpoint, but most importantly, they do get very high stock as well. Then I would also consider trying Concepts, because they have decent stock, not quite as high as DTLR and Jimmy Jazz, but most importantly because of their Cloudflare protection. Although there have been bots that have been running Concepts really well lately, it's still not on the same level as other Shopify sites at the very least. Then my final suggestion would be, only if you do have access to an early link, if one of your groups that you're in does provide them, then I would suggest giving Kit a try. Just refresh the early link and you're already at an advantage rather than having to search for it. So at 9:59 a.m. Eastern Time, you should be refreshing your desired Shopify site of choice. Again, those are my top 4 suggestions when it comes to any general release Jordan drop. You should be trying to focus on one of those, and you could experiment, of course, with different ones every time. So as soon as you try to cart the item, you will be put into a queue. That is, after you solve the checkpoint captcha. As soon as you're into the queue, I would suggest trying to enter in as many accounts as possible onto the Nike Sneakers Leo drop. Nike Sneakers is going to be a Leo drop, which means it's not a draw. You're not going to have 10 minutes to enter. Rather, you're only going to have about 2 to 3 minutes to enter in as many accounts as possible in order for all of those accounts to have an equivalent chance at copy. Now, as you're trying to enter those accounts, you may notice you are through queue on Shopify. It'll either say it's out of stock, or you may see the info page pop up. If you do see the info page pop up, fill out your info. You should have autofill set up beforehand on Google Chrome. Then try to process your order as soon as possible. Then as soon as that's complete, whether it's sold out or if you copped, continue trying to enter in as many sneakers accounts as you can. Then right about now, it should be around 10:04 a.m. Eastern Time, maybe even 10:05 a.m. Eastern Time. This is when you should start attempting to try to cart on foot sites. Because remember, foot sites is not about speed, it's about persistency. I've seen many people all the time cop manually as late as 45 minutes into the drop, as late as an hour and 20 minutes into the drop oftentimes. So don't give up when it comes to these foot sites, just keep on trying. There's going to be a ton of errors, of course, but just try your best to keep persevering through all these errors. And in the midst of doing this, in the midst of trying to add to cart through all these errors, you're going to want to be periodically checking your tabs for all the queue-related drops that I did mention earlier. So there you go. That's your perfect strategy for the chaos that goes down at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, because obviously, as a manual user, you can't be a million places at once like you could when you're running numerous tasks on your bot. So obviously, you are going to have to use some time management. I would suggest personally writing out your own personal schedule beforehand, going along with my personal suggestions, just so you have a game plan set to go, because at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, it is going to be chaotic, and you're going to want to try your best. Don't just be one of those dudes who wakes up at 9:59 a.m. Eastern Time, tries to cop on one account on Nike sneakers, and ends up with an L. There are a lot of opportunities to go for these, so make sure you're definitely, at the very least, entering as many accounts as possible on Nike sneakers. And again, those of you who do need verified sneakers accounts, feel free to purchase from my site, TARS. The link is in the description for that. But anyway, with how to cop out of the way, let's discuss the resale when it comes to these. Luckily, they are performing already extremely well. The demand is clearly extremely high on these, and not just that, the sale volume is already ridiculous just a few days out from the drop, so you could certainly expect all sizes for these to be profitable with a good margin as well. So don't hesitate on any of the sizes. You should absolutely be going full throttle on these women's sizes. On the other hand, when it comes to the toddler sizes and the preschool sizes, I can't really say the same. The only thing I could potentially argue would be that this may be a slightly more desired colorway rather than the tie-dyes, but even then, the sale volume is extremely low on the preschool and toddler sizes, so even if you do make a little bit of lunch money off of those, if you don't have tax, it's not going to be anything significant. I would really expect the toddler and preschool to perform very, very similar to what we saw on the tie-dye, which was a complete brick. Perhaps since this is a slightly more desired and sought-after colorway, it'll perform slightly better, maybe only marginally, but the main focus should be the women's sizes. You should be going full throttle on every single size no matter what. But for those of you who are wondering what the best sizes are when it comes to women's Jordan 1s, it's always the biggest sizes or the very small sizes. In between is usually the worst zone, but when it comes to this product specifically, even that worst zone is still going to be a good margin. Don't hesitate on anything. Go full throttle, and with that, I'll leave you guys. Good luck on this release, of course. I trust you'll be okay to get at least one. Have a good day.